All right.
All right. So, how's your week been?
Busy.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Making videos, doing interviews, making more videos, answering a ton of emails, phone calls. Again, when I started this thing, probably shouldn't have put my actual phone number and email out there, but it's a double-edged sword because it lets people find me, but at the same time, it lets people find me.
Right.
So, but when I put it out there, never thought, and we'll talk about this, never thought this thing would get traction on any level. So where do you want to start? How much time do you got, by the way?
You know what? I have as much time as we have as it takes. I don't have anything to do this afternoon, so
okay. We'll just go until you're out of question.
Sounds good. So I guess the first thing I'm curious about is, and I know that you have many videos about this. Actually, just one sec. I need to find it too hard to talk with headphones on.
Oh, it's okay.
So I know that you have many videos about this, and I know that there's the Flat Earth, the Wikipedia, the wiki page or the wiki website for the Flat Earth Society. Sure. So I don't want to get bogged down.
Even though that isn't us.
No, I do know that.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So, well, actually, that's an interesting first question then. So where do you stand in relation to the Flat Earth Society?
We don't. In fact, most of the people, in fact, 90% of the people in the community have nothing to do with the society. When I first got into this thing, which was the summer of 2014, I looked at the actual Flat Earth Society, the one that was out there anyway, the one that Eric Dubay was in, and I found that there were gatekeepers at the door of this thing shooing people away. And I talked about that in the Flat Earth Clues. I said, look, when I went there, and of course this society is gone now for a completely different reason, but I went there and there were literally people at the door of the forums saying, it's a joke, it's not real, go away, nothing to see here. And I thought, wow, that's really weird. Why would you have dedicated, and not just one guy, dedicated trolls that would spend their days, if you want to troll, if you're good at trolling, you go on YouTube, it's like Christmas every day. You can just troll people all day long and get reactions. So why are you trolling a group that doesn't even have 500 members at the time? And so I said, you know what? These guys have nothing to offer me at all. I joined, of course, I put in my membership, and it took me, 6 months. I think the guy's last name was Shenton, no relation to the original guy, Shenton, from years ago. He was based out of Hong Kong, and so I got my certificate and the whole 9 yards. And then for some reason, Eric Dubay, he pulled out of them and started his own society called he revived the International Flat Earth Research Society, IFERS for short. And when he did that, he took enough people out of there with him that that particular Flat Earth Society just closed down. They shut down, and he put a message. It's like, oh, we'll be back. And no, you're not. You're not coming back after that. And it's gone, and that was it. So, but everybody else that has been into it, because there's so much more material that isn't in a dedicated website, mostly YouTube, nobody's tied to it. In fact, I don't know anybody except for myself who even joined one of these clubs. So everybody that you see, and everybody that's going to be doing the conference in the fall in North Carolina, they don't have anything to do with the society.
When's the conference?
Oh, it is the second week of November in Raleigh, North Carolina. And there's lots of videos out there. You can just type in Flat Earth Conference and you'll find it. That was just released, I think, 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and the VIP tickets already sold out. Sold out in the first week. Go figure. So,
did you manage to snag one, or?
Oh, I'm a presenter.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Oh yeah. They called me up almost right away and said, yeah, we'd like you to be the keynote speaker at the first lunch and then be the co-host at the award show on the second night, which is the last event of the conference. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm going to be hyping this thing up every freaking week until it happens.
So you said since we started the website. So who is we? Like you mentioned in relation to the work that you're doing, like the videos and stuff, you said we. So are you working with other people?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you know and what you don't know about the community. The community is huge at this point, but everybody is fragmented doing their own things. So
Okay.
the main, I mean, how many do we have? Like, we have like a dozen speakers going to the convention. All those people are key, but we picked a dozen out of, oh geez, there's probably 100 good channels out there. And those are just the YouTube channels. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are subscribers. And then people that know but don't subscribe, got to be in the millions at this point. I've got videos out there that I didn't even make that have 2.5 million hits each on them. And they're my material, but they were so because what I did was, again, when I went out there and started doing this, I went and built. I built the videos, and then I made them Creative Commons license, so anybody could take them. And I said, "Look, have fun with them," because I didn't even monetize the channel for the first 15 months because I figured why do it? And I didn't know how far this thing would go. And a couple people took them and then mashed them up and re-edited them a little bit and put them on their own channels and just started getting massive. Retitled them. One was called "They Are Hiding God with the Greatest Lie Ever," which is a clever title, and the other one was called "Under the Dome Full Documentary." And both of those right now are at about 2.5 million each. So
Under the Dome full documentaries.
Yeah.
How long is that?
2 hours.
Okay.
That's all the clues. So what I did, and again, I don't know how much you know. What I did was when I built a series of. Do you want me to go back to kind of the beginning, or do you have like a list of questions?
Just how you get started.
Okay. I started doing this back in the summer of 2014 when I was into conspiracies at the time anyway. I mean, I love a good conspiracy. I'm a big media guy, love movies, love television shows. I absorb as much media as possible. And everybody in the conspiracy world, no matter which conspiracy you're into, I don't care what it is, everybody knows about Flat Earth because it is the runt of the litter. It is the ugly cousin. It is the last book on the shelf. Nobody wants to read this thing. Nobody does. Everybody knows about it, but everybody ignores it because we all know it's the stupidest thing ever, which in itself is interesting. Why would everybody in the conspiracy world who have very open-minded people, why would they all dismiss the exact same thing? And that is Flat Earth. And even I knew there was a problem because in summer of 2014, when I clicked on my first resource on it, which was in YouTube, some German guy that was talking about flights in the Southern Hemisphere, and he said, look, they're all wrong. Something about the flights in the Southern Hemisphere don't look right. When I clicked on that video, I got flushed. I literally had a physical reaction to it. I was going, God, I'm embarrassed to even click on this. How is that possible? And I caught myself doing it. So why would I? I mean, I literally know people that do cosplay. I myself have been to Comic-Con on vacation. I'm a pretty eccentric guy, not embarrassed about a lot of things. And then I started looking at it and I was going, okay, it's dumb. Everyone, it's an interesting story, but it's dumb. And because that's what we're told. And then I watched a video by a Canadian artist up in Montreal, because I know you're up in Canada too,
yep.
Right? Yeah, Canadian artist in Montreal. His name was Matt Boylan. And he became a contract artist for NASA to do photorealistic planetscapes for different simulated missions. Nothing sinister, just simulated mission crap. Because he was a really good organic, still is. He's still around, although now he's in California. He did. By the way, if you're recording this audioly, or if you're not, everything I have is recorded, so I can send you an audio copy of this.
Oh no, I'm recording it.
Oh, so perfect. Because I saw you jotting down notes. It's like the last guy was like, "Dude, you're gonna be writing forever." So anyway, he told an interesting story on camera, sober, and I got to say that because most of the stuff he's not sober. Where he went to a high-level NASA event because a pretty dynamic guy, a good-looking artist. Singer, Renaissance type guy, went out to a party in the Hamptons with all some NASA guys, and there was a power outage, and it was down to candles and wine. Everyone was kind of swapping stories, campfire type stuff. And some guy says, "Yeah, I heard that the GPS doesn't work down in Antarctica." And then another guy goes, "Fred, you ought to send a team down there to confirm that." And some other even spookier guy chimes in and goes, "Well, if he sends his guys out that far, they're not coming back." And Matt, drinking wine, going, "Why wouldn't they come back?" He goes, "Well, because GPS doesn't work down there." "Why wouldn't GPS work down there?" He goes, "Because it's flat." And Matt, he was like 25 at the time, did not get it. Like a lot of people, couldn't see the forest for the trees. Just blew right. I would have blown by me too. In fact, it was interesting on a side note. About the same time that he heard that story, I was looking online. I was running a tech support team out of Boulder, Colorado, proprietary software, time and attendance software, and I wanted to put iconic Earth images on all the monitors that were in the tech support area. And I go online and I start running Boolean searches for, and granted, this was in 2000, 2001. The internet wasn't super, super great at the time, but it was still out there. I started doing searches for pictures of the Earth from space. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. No matter what search I ran, I got just rows and rows and rows of the exact same image. Just different resolutions. And it was all the Apollo 17 first blue marble shot the Earth from space. And I didn't understand it back then. I mean, I literally was in front of my face 15 years ago and I could not see it. I'm looking at it. I'm going, how is this even possible? Well, no matter what string I run, I just keep getting the same bank of images, one image. And I just look at the screen and go, NASA, you suck. You're terrible on the internet. I can't believe that you would only release one image. Didn't get it. Because why would I? I wasn't looking at anything. I mean, 9/11 hadn't even happened yet when I was looking at this thing. So anyway, backtrack to summer of 2014. So I listened to the Matt Boylan story and I get into it and I go, okay, it's a good story. I really like his little details he threw in there because the guy, like the spooky guy that came in and said it doesn't work, that it's flat. He takes a piece of chalk at that point and he starts drawing on the cement floor what the world looks like. And Matt said by the time he was done, he was going into thermodynamics and how energy worked and how the whole system freaking operated. He goes, by the time he was done, he basically drew the UN flag on the floor because that's what it looks like, the UN flag. And I go, okay, this is a great story. Science fiction movie of the week, Twilight Zone episode. Good stuff, actually. But there's no way it could be true.
Can I just interrupt you for a sec? So
yeah.
Who told Matt Boylan this? I'm just a bit unclear on that. Was it the people he worked with at NASA?
The people he worked with at NASA. And I completely understood when you see Matt when he was in his 20s, you completely understood why he would have been invited to this party. Because he said one of the high-level physicists at NASA was also a photorealistic painter. Matt will not give out the names of these guys. He is scared to death. I don't know why at this point. It's like, dude, what do you got to lose? You didn't get married. You didn't have kids. But he wouldn't tell the story any more than that. That was the only time I even heard him tell the story. Was when he was on, when his girlfriend, his Canadian girlfriend, made him sit down and tell the story. So they were the ones that told him this. And he tries for the next several years to get this story out there. Eventually they let him go. When you're a contract artist, you can work anywhere. And they, eventually they changed their numbers and his contacts wouldn't call him back anymore and the paychecks stopped coming, blah, blah, blah. And he tried to get it. He tried telling people for years. Nobody would listen. I mean, granted, he was going about it in a very limited fashion, meaning he was always saying the same thing because he only knew he was going photo or painting. He was always looking at NASA images, and every image that came out, he'd just dissect it. And in fact, he was the guy that first looked at the 1990 Galileo footage, which was the only footage for years and years and years that showed the Earth rotating on its axis. And he spotted it almost immediately. He goes, it's weird. He goes, that thing rotates for 24 hours, right? And it's a fairly detailed image, even for 1990. He goes, the weather doesn't morph. The weather doesn't morph at all. The clouds do not move in 24 hours. The entire world stays static. He goes, it's impossible. They thought that nobody would pick up on it. And again, thought it was an interesting story. But I hammered on this thing like anybody that's in the community. Everybody starts out trying to debunk it. Everybody thinks it's I thought the same thing too. I thought it was ridiculous. I worked on it for 9 months. And every thread that I pulled on led to more threads. And everything just started to unravel to where in February of 2015, I gave up. And I said, okay, I'm going to go at this a completely different way. I'm going to say, I can't prove the globe right now. And so I made a series of videos on YouTube called Flat Earth Clues. Mm-hmm. Again, made them Creative Commons licensed. They were short, easy to digest, no math involved. In fact, I was almost baiting the scientists in the academic community. I was almost baiting them to come at me and say, just look, bring it down. What can you do? And I put it out there. I said, prove me wrong. I don't think it's a globe anymore. I don't think you can prove it's a globe. And if you can, in some way, I will quit this thing. And it completely backfired because shortly after that, not only did I get, the flood of people that were coming at me, the emails just never stopped. My phone never stopped. I kept the number. I don't answer the phone anymore, basically. The phone calls never stopped. And then I started getting interview requests. Then a publisher out of London called me up and said, hey, we'd like to turn your clues into a book. It's like, oh, okay, cool, great. App, look like do apps, websites, the whole 9 yards. But what was interesting was I started getting subject matter experts that were calling me up. And I with, engineers, pilots, military, all branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, air traffic controllers, anybody that had to do with anything that had to do with transportation were contacting me, surveyors, all saying the same thing. And they said, you know what? You may be onto something. Because even though we've heard about things like the curvature formula of the Earth and the Coriolis effect, which says that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and all these things, nobody uses them in their 9-to-5 jobs. We don't use them. We've heard of them. Everybody's heard of them. And in fact, the pilots had a really tough time when they were talking to me. They're going, look, it doesn't matter what altitude you're at. You only see a flat horizon. All our gauges treat the world like it's flat. He goes, but it can't be flat because we're told it's not flat. So, but then the pilots would go on and say, well, and I go, so why don't more pilots say anything about this? And they go, well, because if you get from point A to point B and nobody dies, that's a win. So, if there's no accidents, nothing happens, great. You're too busy to even care. Plus, if you did notice, who are you going to tell? Who are you going to go to if you're a pilot and all of a sudden, it's like you're on a 777 on a flagship and you're the navigator. Who are you going to go to? The FAA, your airline? You're going to say, hey, Frank, I think the world's flat. I think the maps are wrong. You'd be better off, seriously, you'd be better off telling them that you were chased by a UFO for 2 hours because that's how they're going to treat you. In fact, being chased by a UFO, that Japanese pilot that was chased through Alaska, he got on the ground and said the first thing. It's like, I got chased by a giant UFO. And he was grounded. He never flew again, but at least he wasn't fired. If you tell people that you're into flat Earth, it's an amazing response of how it's so polarizing. And the reason is because we are conditioned for it. In fact, I'll throw something new at you, which I haven't done because I'm working on a new Think of Clues. And because I'm trying to come up with new introductions. Everyone keeps saying, how do we bring this up to people? How do we bring this up to people? So I'll try something on you.
That's one of my questions. So
okay, one of the quotes, and I'm stealing a little bit from George Orwell, the guy that wrote 1984, who said he wrote an article in 1946 for the Tribune, and it was something to the effect that how science has a great responsibility, and he was not a flat earther. I'd like to preface it with that, but he says it's interesting. He goes, you go to anybody on the street and you ask them how they know it's a globe, their first response is always the same. And that is, well, we know. Duh, we know. That's what we all know. This is a given, like algebra. And if you press it, they start getting angry. So here's what I came up with. If you, in fact, you could apply this to, and this was in 1946. NASA wasn't even founded until 1958. So here's my preface. You could ask 100 people on the street right now how they know it's a globe, and they will probably knee-jerk the reaction, say, well, we know, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. But once you get past all that crap, eventually they're going to lean on NASA. Sooner or later, everybody's going to say the same thing. And I don't care what country you're in. Everyone's going to lean on NASA because they were the first ones. My question is, how did we know, and NASA didn't even release the first picture until 1972. The first full-blown disc picture. A lot of people don't know that. We had Apollo 8 through Apollo 16. No pictures were ever taken of the Earth. Last mission, coming home on the way back, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, might as well take this snapshot. They dragged their feet till the very end. Question is, how did we know before 1972 that we were on a globe? Because it's not like we woke up one day in the 1970s and said, well, there's the picture. Thank God. We didn't know. I take that back even further. It's like, how did you know beforehand? It's like, well, we knew because science told us. That will be the only answer you're going to get. They'll mention things like Coriolis effect and curved shadows on the moon and sticks and shadows. And just take your pick. There's a whole bunch there's actually only about a dozen you can use. But then I go back and I say, okay, but these are things you're told. These are not things you're known. Before that picture was taken in 1972, all you had was the globe in the classroom, which was put in there since you were 6 years old. and stayed with you your entire life. Until you know, and science will argue this is like, well, no, we absolutely know. No, you didn't. Because until you can get high enough in a vehicle to actually see the Earth curve below you, until you can get the full shot of the Earth, you don't know for sure. I don't care if science says that they're 99.999% sure, you don't know. So my question is, that I put forth in one of the clues was, if science got up high enough and it didn't look like what they thought, would they tell you? And, your first reaction is going to be, I don't know you from Adam. So your first reaction, if you're science, well, they wouldn't lie to us. Science doesn't make leaps of faith like that. And one of my clues, like, yeah, they do. In fact, I caught a scientist in a debate. It was a guy from London, kind of like the London version of Bill Nye, young science educator. That's what he calls himself anyway. And I said, look, you can take any textbook you want, any science textbook you want. You do you look up the cross section of the Earth. We all know what it looks like. It goes from red to orange to yellow to white, and there's all these molten layers, and they know exactly what it is all the way down. And you believe that if you believe in this model, that it's like 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth. And I'm not going to convert it to kilometers for you. Hopefully, mile.
I can do that.
Okay. But 4,000 miles to the center, and I go, okay, that's great. How did you come up with this? Because what's the deepest probe you've ever drilled? 2,000 miles? 1,000? 100? 10? Deepest hole ever drilled was 8 miles. And the Germans did it and the Russians did it. They cannot get past 8 miles. As a matter of fact, the Russians tried, once they got down to 8 miles, they tried for another 7 or 8 years to get below 8 miles. They could not do it. The bits just kept turning into slag, and that was it. They couldn't get past. So what exactly is the cross-section you're showing me of the Earth? Where are you coming up with this? And the scientist that I was talking to, he was getting pretty flustered because he knew full well where I was going with. I was like, look, you're making extrapolations and you're not putting the disclaimer in the picture anywhere. In fact, you go to Wiki and they'll say, oh yeah, well, it's based off of different things. We're extrapolating. We're expanding on different concepts. We don't know. I'm going, so why don't you take the freaking picture of that you show the classrooms and just put a big question mark in the center? Why don't you leave the question mark there? And that's because science won't do it. Science will make those leaps of faith. And you're thinking, okay, what's this got to do with anything? If they're willing to do that and a whole bunch of other things, like the Mercator map versus the Gall-Peters map, who's to say that if science were the first people to discover that the globe model really wasn't accurate, would they bury it? And I'll be the first one to tell you that if I was in that room, if I was the smoking man from the X-Files, absolutely you'd hide this thing. The repercussions, because a lot of people would ask, that one of the follow-up questions is, why? Why in the world would you hide it? If you think it through, nothing would be the same economically, academically, spiritually. Nothing would be the same. The ripple effect would be borderline catastrophic, depending on how you spun it. And so from everything that I saw, everything that I connected the dots to, showed that the United States and the Russians simultaneously figured it out in the middle of the 1950s. They went to the outer marker, the outer border. They figured it out and started firing rockets straight up at that point for years, trying to figure out how the whole thing got laid out, and kept it buried for decades. And only now, with what I call the internet detection ability, and that is the internet hive mind, and that is all it takes is one nerd in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. to look at something and say, wait, this picture is completely wrong, or the timestamp doesn't match up with this. It's starting to all fall apart. And I know I'm kind of rambling here, but you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. You being in Canada, understand that most people lean on the American space program, and that is, well, the Americans went to the moon. The Americans went to the moon. And for me, it answered a huge question, which was burning in me for at least 10 years, which was, okay, I don't believe the Americans actually went there, but why the heck would you fake it? Why would you fake the moon mission? And because I never could come up with a good enough reason for it. Every reason was pretty good. It's like, okay, wave the flag, America's great, go team, rah, rah. Yeah, I get that. But it's a good reason, but it's not a great reason. When the flat earth model or the enclosed world model came out, that's when I understood it. That's when I said, okay, it's not that they wanted to fake it. You had to fake it. You had to. In fact, it kind of worked in itself, and that was eventually, and this will be the end of my little ramble, eventually you have to hand the picture of the Earth to people. You have to do this. Sooner or later, you're going to have to show a picture of the Earth from space. But you can't just hand it to them, because people are going to say, whoa, how'd you take the picture? You actually have to fake a rocket program just to at least give the appearance that you could go high enough to take the picture of. It's the most expensive picture ever taken, but even though it wasn't taken of anything. And simultaneously, you kill two birds with one stone, which is the picture that was released, and you can look at it in the 1972 picture. You would think since the Americans took it, they'd show North America, big North American shot. This is America, because this is the picture you're going to distribute to the whole world. They only showed one continent. It's in its entirety. And that was Antarctica. Half of Africa, all of Antarctica, that was it. It's like, why would you show these two continents? It doesn't even make sense. It's because they had to define both of them simultaneously. Anyway, sorry. I know I'm all over the place, but...
No. So I have a few questions based on everything you just said. So first of all, so do you believe that any sort of, I guess, rocket or space shuttle went into the sky through a NASA program? So, like, has anything gone up? And if so, where did it go?
Rockets go up, but they are ditched. And you can look up all the footage. And there's wonderful videos out there by people in the community where those rockets... One, we already know the boosters are sent out to the middle of the... NASA will tell you the boosters sent out to the middle of the South Pacific, and it's what they call the spaceship graveyard or something like that. But the rockets go horizontal almost immediately. All they do is get out of normal visual range, and then they arc over, and they're not going up anywhere. Now, are there rockets? Yes. Are people building rockets? Yeah. In fact, I lived next to, when I was in Colorado, one of my neighbors was the garage mechanic for NASA. His name was Wayne Ottinger. And he knows all the astronauts, everyone from Mercury and Gemini and Apollo, all of them on a first-name basis. Everyone at 99.99% of people who work in the space programs, they're wrench turners. They do their jobs and nobody knows anything. It's only the telemetry guys, only the people that do deal with the software, that deal with the telemetry. They're the only ones that really have to know, of course, and some high-level guys. But most of them don't have to fake anything. So yeah, money is spent, and they're building rockets and they're putting them up. Now, are there astronauts on the tops of any of these things? No way. That's the last thing you'd want to do, which is why the Space Shuttle Challenger from the 1980s was so interesting, because in fact, you can look this one up, and we're hoping to pin these guys. The Challenger disaster, where 7 astronauts supposedly died. Six of them,
disaster.
Yeah, 6 of them apparently are still alive, walking around with slightly different names. They use their middle names, or they claim that they're twin brothers. 2 of them apparently are twins of other people, and they're all professors. They're all doing very well, and that would make sense, because if you had a malfunction where the rocket blew up, and you have 2 choices. You can do a Capricorn 1 scenario from the movie from 1978 where you just kill the astronauts in real life. It's like, oh, sorry, rocket didn't, just shoot them. Or you put them in a witness relocation, because in the 80s there was no internet, so nobody's going to find these guys. You can just relocate them anywhere you want. Nobody knew the faces. It's not like now, you saw them once on television, barely, VCRs weren't even that prevalent back then. So nobody recorded everything like they do now. And so anyway, nobody's on the top of anything. And I'll use 2 points to illustrate this, because a lot of people say, well, did all the astronauts know? It's like, no, they don't all know. Nowadays, I think that most of the astronauts, because almost all of them are military anyway, they start in the Air Force, they're paid to basically shut up. They can fake stuff, but they're told, look, you don't have clearance to even ask why you're faking whatever you're faking. I think the Apollo astronauts knew, which is why they all crawled into bottles and became recluses and said really weird, creepy things throughout their careers, and acted, these guys should have been super excited pretty much their whole lives. And they were all extreme. Neil Armstrong, the worst of the worst. I mean, during that press conference with Bill Clinton, where he's addressing some NASA students, and he's saying, look, there's more work to be done if you can reveal one of truth's hidden protective layers. It's like, what are you talking about, man? What are you doing up there? And he looked like he was going to cry while he was saying it. It was ridiculous. So I think the Apollo astronauts knew, but then they realized, okay, it's just too much. For a lot of people, it is, because again, you can read in the comments and the people that are attacking the community. It's so polarizing. People get really angry about this. So Nowadays, I think the ISS people and, well, the shuttle program shut down, a whole nother story. Any of those guys, they just saw non-disclosure agreements saying, look, you don't have clearance. We're gonna put you in zero-G simulators or put you in underwater things, and we'll pay you, but you don't even get to ask why, and which is why they seem perfectly normal for the most part.
So why should we be questioning this? Like, why should we be questioning the science that we were taught so young and questioning the government's motives? Like what benefit does that have?
What do you mean? Why does the community even exist? Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Sure.
I don't know. To be honest, it's weird. It's almost contagious in a way because it's such a big. Everyone loves a mystery. Human beings love a good mystery. They love solving things, which is why conspiracies get as much traction as they do. Although most conspiracies you can hide in the desert. You can keep those. If you don't, for example, here's the big reason why this thing is catching on as well as it is. Every other conspiracy up until this point can be hidden. I don't care which one you pick, and I'm not going to list too many of them. But if you don't care about 9/11. You don't ever have to look at 9/11. It's not going to affect your life in any way. Or Sandy Hook, or Pearl Harbor, or JFK, or any war that's ever been fought in the Americas, or anything like that. Secrets can be buried in the desert. You never have to worry about them. But when it comes to this, it's the one conspiracy, and the only part of it that's really a conspiracy is that it was because we didn't build this structure by any stretch. It has nothing to do with us, with the exception of we helped keep it a secret. That's the only conspiracy part. It's 9/11 and all this other crap. Human beings, it's cause and effect. They did everything, but with this, we didn't have. All we were doing was keeping it secret. So it's the only thing that you can't run away from. You can't, it affects you right now. There's nothing, you have to resolve it in your head one way or the other. And it comes down to this weird Pandora's box thing that happens with people where you either don't, your only defense against this, to be quite honest at this point, is to not look at it. And I've seen it happen with science, people that are heavily based in science. You just don't look at it. So you treat it literally like a Pandora's box. That box is stupid. I'm not going to look at that box. You're an idiot for even thinking about that box. Why are we talking about the box? Blah, blah, blah. As long as you don't look in it, you're fine. And I've even told family members this, family members which I know will not be able to deal with this. Like my sister, perfect example. She's like, look, I've got better things to do. My life is already I'm dealing with what I can. I go, this is not going to help. I go, good, then don't look at it. But if you look at it, and what you'll do is you'll try to disprove it. You'll try to shut it down. And you might think you have it. But then there'll be 3 or 4 more things that'll pop up that you can't nail down. And it just keeps snowballing and snowballing to where, again, if you're asking why this is happening, I have no idea why this may be happening.
Not why it's happening per se, but why you think that it should be questioned.
Well, that's just it. There's no reason why it should be questioned. It just seems to be a side effect of the topic itself. Nobody goes into this wanting to question science. I mean, look, I used to literally collect antique globes as a hobby. I mean, I love the globe icon. I would take I would love taking antique globes off their spindles. I had bunches of them around. I love the whole globe concept. I'm the last guy that wanted to question this. But once you hear the story, honestly, it's like hearing a campfire story and you can't get it out of your head. Because once you hear it, you can't resolve it. And it just gets worse. So nobody wants to question this. I mean, look, as I've told people, I'm not saying that science, I've never considered myself a super deeply religious person, even though the different religions have latched onto this thing quite tenaciously. Science has done wonderful things for us, no question. Air conditioning, light bulbs, microwave ovens, all very convenient, wonderful things. Great, fantastic. But science, like anything else, seems to have, I don't want to use, you know what, if I upset them, I upset them. Power corrupts. And they seem to have taken some liberties, and they have over the years. We all know this. And I'm not talking about the military applications. So you need scientists to develop stuff, for the military, like nerve gas or napalm or atomic weapon. They're paid to do that. I get that. rushing civilian things to the market can get a little dicey, without adequate testing. Lead paint, lead gasoline, DDT, asbestos. Oh, I don't know. The scientists that took the bribes that said that cigarettes were okay, then were countered by the other scientists that took the money that said they weren't okay. So don't tell me that science is infallible, even though Neil deGrasse Tyson will make statements like, and he is our current number one enemy right now, which is, he'll make statements like, science is right whether you believe in it or not. One of the most arrogant things I've ever heard, because it's not. Science takes steps, takes leaps, and takes steps where I don't think they have the right to do. For example, I'll use the Indiana Jones reference because this will kind of make sense. Indiana Jones, the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's all about who gets the Ark, right? We're freaking the Ark. The whole movie about who ended up with the Ark. The Americans did at the very end. What the Americans did, the last 60 seconds of the movie were the most important part of the entire movie. The Americans put it in a crate, they put it in a warehouse, they sealed it up. Nobody ever saw it again. And the reason is because it went against science. Science will do things. If anything goes up against science, they will generally try to hide it or they will try to marginalize it. If at all possible. Again, I've loved science stuff, but if you go against them, they will try to destroy the whole. I'm thinking of a good example here. I had one. It was really, really good. Give me a second.
Maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, maybe it will. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So so you mentioned religion there. So I do find that interesting that some flat Earth. What do you call yourselves? Flat Earthers, flat Earth truthers? Like,
take your pick. I mean, flat Earthers is probably a good one. The flat Earth community, flat Earthers, sure.
Okay, so some in the flat Earth community would have this based in a religious argument.
Yes.
So do you come from that perspective?
I won't denounce it. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
What I have learned through flat Earth is that all the big five religions that make up 80% of our world, and that would be Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. All of them seem to have pieces of the same puzzle. Now, Christianity, because we're in America and there's a lot of Christians in America, Christianity has really latched onto this, especially and then they've been quoting a lot of chapter and verse over the last year. There's a wonderful website out there called testingtheglobe.com, and it is done by a very strong Christian. But there are others out there that the Christian community is huge. Was I raised born-again Christian? Yes, I was. Did I fall away from that when I went to college? Yes, I did. Because I was raised on a very rural island up in the northwest of the United States. If you know the Northwest at all, I'm currently in Victoria, Canada right now, but it's just south of here. So, and I get the chapter and verses. Actually, they are very, very convincing. But yeah, if you're in the Christian community, and there's a huge war going on in the Christian community over this, because you have Bible literalists that will say that everything in the Bible is literal, but they won't. Again, it's their conditioning. But they'll say everything is literal except for this, except for the flat Earth. It can't be flat. And it's like, why not? Well, and they won't say it. They won't say, well, because science tells us it's flat, because that's hypocritical. But the other side of the coin is that there's a lot of people in the Christian community which will say that, and they'll quote a lot of chapter and verse. Take your pick. There's so many things out there about, starting in Genesis, the firmament, the barrier, separating the waters above and the waters below. The earth is fixed and immovable. He who sits upon the circle of the earth and the canopy and down grasshoppers, footstool of God, blah, blah, blah. Lots of fun stuff. But it's got some interesting, and the book of Enoch has taken a huge revival because of this. The non-canonized book and even the book of Jasher is taking some stuff in here. So do I think here? Let me paint kind of a broader stroke. The reason is because back way, before Copernicus, before all the cultures, and I know people can argue about the Greeks and the Macedonians and all there's some other cultures that kind of said, well, could it be round? But most of your other cultures, especially your Aboriginal tribes in the North Americas and Australia, they all thought the same thing. And that was, the world is what we think, only what we can see. And that is, it looks like a canopy. It looks like a canvas. And everyone thought the world was flat and we were the center of the universe. The geocentric model was the way. Now, did they know how far how far away these bodies were in the sky? No, they didn't. But they all thought the same thing. And then that changed 500 years ago. So it's easy for people with religious backgrounds to latch on to this because everyone will say the same thing. It's like, well, our religious texts are older than Copernicus, therefore ours supersede whatever scientific leap of faith happened. Now, do I also think that Copernicus and the scientists of their day, because remember, it was a huge leap of faith to go from a flat model to, I mean, when you introduce the heliocentric model, it is an immediate, because you're talking about speeds that are hard to comprehend even now. And you're talking about planetary motions and all the very, very complex. I think it was introduced by the builders of this place years ago deliberately, and I think it was done so to keep us from finding the edge, finding the fence, to keep us acting naturally. And I said this in one of my clues, and I don't know if you watched that part, where I said, look, every other life form, I'm not stealing from the Matrix here, every other life form on this planet doesn't care where it is if as long as it's comfortable. So you put a buffalo in a pen, he'll be upset. You put a buffalo in a 1,000-acre wildlife preserve, he couldn't be happier. They got rivers and fields and everything. You put humans in the same thing, they won't care. It could be 1,000 acres, it could be 1,000 miles, it could be a whole continent. They wouldn't care. If they see a fence, all they're going to care about is the fence. Who made the fence? Why is the fence here? Why am I in it? What's my purpose here? Did I anger the people outside the fence? Maybe we should sacrifice people to the fence. You can see where it goes, right? So the only way to cure that is to get rid of the fence, which is it's not like you can make it invisible. You tell people it isn't there. In fact, that not only is it not there, you can't get there because it's a globe. It's brilliant, actually. And then you put subtle negative reinforcements. The model, and when I started digging into this, because I started out, before I did, and I played games my whole life. Before I started train people on proprietary software, I did games. I played games for a living. Game theory, the whole thing. I was really into it, played it professionally. And I thought of this as, I tried to look at it from a building standpoint, kind of like a Sim City type of scenario, trying to build this. And I said, okay, if I had to hide the world, how would I do it? So let's say it was. Let's say you did build, something like a Truman Show, a stadium, a dome stadium that was thousands of miles wide and a couple thousand miles high. How would you hide it? And every aspect I looked at was brilliant. How it was designed was very, very clever. Like a 3% salt solution in the oceans limits sea travel by 95% because you can't drink what you're sailing on. Most sailing voyages and sail explorations was dependent on your fresh water. Once you ran out of fresh water, you had to turn back. Then around the outer edge, you had to you keep lowering the temperature to where was it 15 degrees? I'll do Fahrenheit. So icebergs start forming. If that doesn't turn them back, if they make it to the Antarctic coastline, the Antarctic coastline is mostly a 150, 200-foot wall of ice straight up. Try to find a beachhead anywhere close. That's almost impossible. Then, once you get up on top of there's no indigenous plant life or animal life. And then you've got to, where are you going to go? You got to take supplies with you. How far in are you willing to go before you turn back? It's the most hostile environment there is. And it's at high altitude. Most people don't know that. It plateaus out at like 14,000 feet. Altitude sickness kicks in at 7,000 feet. And you're thinking, okay, why are you talking about Antarctica? Because Antarctica is one of the big keys to this. When I was looking at this, in fact, part of the reason I got into this is because I was looking at the Hollow Earth and ran into a United States admiral, youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, Admiral Richard Byrd, the greatest explorer of the modern era, says he goes to the North Pole in a plane in 1926, but then they send him to the south, to Antarctica, and he spends basically the rest of his life, the world's greatest explorer, just flying around there looking for something. And shortly after his death in 1957, they create the Antarctic Treaty. Again, which is what you're going, where are you going with this? Well, if you want to hide the world, one of the first things you're going to do is you have to seal off the outer edge and the upper edge if you get a chance. The upper edge, that's easy. Most people can't get up there anyway, so you just militarize space and create NASA. But what's interesting was, in 1958, they created NASA. In 1959, they announced the Van Allen radiation belt, announced by NASA. Van Allen worked for NASA. And he says, oh, yeah, by the way, you can't go. Nobody should go up there. It's super deadly. Everyone that goes up there will die, which leads into a whole nother problem with the space program because it's like, okay, well, if everyone was going to die, how'd you get through it? But simultaneously, the same year, they created the Antarctic Treaty, which was the outer edge. The Antarctic Treaty, again, 99% of the population doesn't even know it exists. It's the only treaty that's unbroken. Says and signed by every country. Every country that becomes an economic power signs this treaty. And it says that none of your corporations can go down there ever. For anything, for all time. And it's, what are you talking about? Let's say I own a country. You have to sign this. I was like, what are you talking about? You can't go. I don't care. Well, I have a petroleum company. It has more money than God. I can go down there. No, you can't. You're talking about, I can start fracking in your backyard tomorrow. You saying I cannot bribe politicians to go down there? No. Not only that, you can't talk about it. What do you mean you can't talk? So I can't go to my buddy at the New York Times and run a full-page ad every month and say how great it would be for my petroleum company to go down to Antarctica and make jobs and make gas cheaper? Nope. Can't do it. Can't do it. And no country, it's never been broken. Unilaterally, it's never been broken. China, nobody protests. Russia, nobody cares. British, nope. Nobody ever talks about it. It's not even up for debate until the year 2041. And you're saying, well, it's probably for environmental reasons. Like, really? What plants are we stepping on? What populations or what are we disturbing down there? In fact, in 1959, there were no environmental anything. Environmentalism wasn't even a word in 1959. Greenpeace wasn't even founded until the mid-1970s. So, and now they say it's because of scientific reasons. Well, we want pristine ice cores. Like, you have millions of, even if we believe what you say it is about Antarctica, it's millions and millions of square miles of nothing but super deep ice and high altitude places. It's amazing. So Antarctica is one, and the reason why I bring Antarctica up is because it's the only continent that doesn't look anything like what the maps show us. Every other continent on the map more or less looks, even on a flat map, looks more or less what it looks like now, except for Antarctica. Antarctica is not this Australia-type island continent. It is literally, it's way, way bigger, and it surrounds us in all directions. No matter what direction you go, eventually you will hit the Antarctic coastline, if you can ignore the compasses and GPS.
So the image behind you, is that what it would look like?
More or less. That it's not as oval. That guy did it for, kind of stretched it for the poster shape. I've got better pictures. Actually, that one, I don't know if you can see that one back there.
No, I can't.
Well, that's all right. You can look it up. You can't miss it. All you have to do is look up, because it's not hard to find. When I was looking up, again, back in 2015 when I was doing this, I was looking up map projections, and I ran into one called the azimuthal equidistant, AZIMUTHAL equidistant. And it was really fascinating because, again, it was the only map on the list of map projections that had anything next to it, notations next to it. Everything else was boring. Nothing ever happened there. But this one, it was like, okay, well, one, it was proposed by a Persian scientist, now Iran, from 1,000 years ago. Two, it's used in the USGS, United States Geologic Survey, as a map projection, which is interesting. But the third thing was, it's also the UN flag. I mean, it's identical to the UN flag. In fact, when you look at the UN flag, don't think this is an accident. There's only one thing missing on the UN flag, and that's Antarctica. And people say, well, no, on that projection, you couldn't put Antarctica. It's like, why not? Of course, I can give you 3 or 4 projections right now that show the whole world, including Antarctica, and you can put it on a flag, and it looks real nice. In fact, one was used in the original Star Trek series as an alternate universe flag, and I still steal it for my logo. So don't tell me that Antarctica shouldn't be on the UN flag. And it's also interesting because, and it could be because technically, another question for you, nobody owns Antarctica. Find me any other piece of real estate anywhere, and it is owned by somebody. If it's not owned privately, it's owned by the state. If it's not owned by the state, it's owned, in your case, by the province or by the country. It's or a federal level or whatever it is. Everything is owned by something. All the territories have been claimed. Antarctica is not claimed, and nobody even fights over it. Nobody even talks about it. In fact, all the countries, again, so weird. When Admiral Byrd was down there for his last mission, Operation Deep Freeze, there were a slew of countries down there. And he went on television talking about them all. He's like Argentina, Chile, New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, Russia, United States. Just take your pick. They were all down there. And then after that mission happened, they all left. They all left simultaneously. And now the only people that are down there are the military and scientists, mostly on the edge. You want to go down there? Yes, you right now could go down tomorrow. Spend, I think, 10 grand, maybe 15. Go to the coastline, the peninsula, have your picture taken with penguins on the coastline. There's only indigenous life on the water. And and that's it. But as far as just going down there and renting a helicopter and just taking off, no, you can't. And that's the reason is because for the same reason why the corporations are not allowed down there. And that is you cannot, and I totally agree with what they did. That's just it. When I was trying to do the whole hide the world scenario, once I started seeing the moves that were made, I was going, yeah, you have to. And that is, if you let a petroleum company go down there, sooner or later, somebody's going to screw up. Their plane's going to get lost, and they're going to be flying all over the place. Don't know where they are, because you're going to go snow blind. There's not a lot of markers down there in the snow. Or a helicopter's going to get lost or whatever. What are you going to do if they see something they shouldn't see? What are you going to do? You're going to make them disappear? You're going to pay them off? It just becomes a hassle. So somebody made the decision back in the days that, you know what, nobody's going. It's not worth the money, which leads me to, one of the big questions is what, I said this in the clue, what conspiracy is bigger than money? Every other conspiracy has to do with money. It's the vanilla sky argument where 9 out of 10 problems in the world are based on money. What conspiracy is bigger than money? This is it. It's so big that it's world changing. And I'm not trying to necessarily do a play on words there, but it is. Nobody understand. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've had a lot more time to think about it. It changes the world in so many different ways just by announcing it, that there's a chance that, what should I say here? The governments could be unhinged because of it. By that I mean, we'll take the academia part about. We all know if this ever happens, every sector of academia would have to be rewritten pretty much from the ground up, and some wouldn't even exist anymore. But it's the same logic where. I'll use the UFO reference. The United States government can never admit that there are UFOs flying around the sky because the UFOs are better than they are. You can't rule the sky if you don't rule the sky. So, you say, oh yeah, whoever those are, they're way better than our fighter planes. You can never say that because it takes credibility away from your own Air Force. If this place was built like a Truman Show, then there's a power bigger than whoever's on television. There's a power bigger than whatever elected official you have, and it undermines their authority. And it's as simple as that. You can't be the ultimate authority if you're not the ultimate authority. People all of a sudden, you're not going to take a chance that all of a sudden a new religion pops up. And I don't necessarily want to equate this to a new religion, but it sort of ties in, which is you don't want people saying, you know what, I don't have to listen to you anymore. I'm going to follow whoever they are. I'm just going to wait for a sign from them. That's dangerous. That is super dangerous. And people, you get a council of, high power people that are in a meeting. That meeting lasts about 10 minutes. People are going, they're just rattling off bad things that can happen. It's like, yeah, we're not letting this, we got to bury this thing for as long as humanly possible. And it took a long time before people finally, took high-speed internet and social media and, reanalyzing a lot of things before this, and of course the traction. Now things can be distributed so quickly that's one of the reasons it's generated as much traction as it has.
So I'm curious to know if there's anything. I mean, you made an interesting statement that you do believe in science, right? You believe in sort of technological advancements, obviously.
Oh, I do.
So you don't completely rebuke science. So
no, I don't.
No. So is there anything else what else are you skeptical of, and why?
Skeptical of in terms of science?
In terms of anything, like you said that you enjoy conspiracy theories. So what else are you skeptical?
Oh my God. Well, I was a big believer. Let's put it this way. I'm a little different when it comes to conspiracy guys. I almost called myself an anti-conspiracy guy, but that's not the right word for it. There's a word for it. I'm a conspiracy guy that believes in the greater good. Meaning I can put because I did support when I did support for these software companies, I dealt with a lot of clients. So was really empathetic, meaning I could put myself in other people's shoes and I could understand what they were feeling fairly quickly. So I didn't have to stick to my guns and dig in and, how blood fusers started basically. So when I looked at conspiracies, I would look at it from both sides. I'd say, okay, yeah, maybe the government did this, but why did they do it? Because most people will stop there. They'll say, okay, JFK was killed. He was shot by multiple snipers, and for whatever reason it was a bad, horrible thing. I will go the other side and say, okay, was JFK? Did he have to die? Yeah, he did. I'm sorry, and people don't like it when I say that, and I'm not. which is why I don't spread it around that much. But I say, look, JFK was going to die. It was inevitable. It was Caesar all over again, although JFK didn't have nearly as much power. Meaning, I'll give you a perfect example. People don't think about, when you put yourself in the government's shoes, or whoever it was, the powers that be, JFK had to die because he was a long-term problem. It's not like they killed him. It was like, oh, we got to take him out. No, it's like, look, re-election was coming up in 1964. He's gonna get reelected. In fact, JFK, I think, could have run against Jesus and beat him in 1964. He goes all the way to 1968. Bobby takes over. Remember his brother, Attorney General. Bobby runs from 1968 to 1972, gets reelected. That's 1972 to 1976. That's 16 years right off the bat of Kennedy's. Oh, no. That's not going to happen. The powers that be, they're not going to let that go. He's going down.
So why would it have been a problem for the Kennedy family to sort of continuously govern?
Oh, he was bucking the system, and he had no power. This was shortly after the only president in the United States that the last one that ever had any power is Dwight Eisenhower, and that's because he was a 5-star general and led the Allies during World War II. Great little story about Dwight. Here, put him in perspective, which is. He did not know, the story goes, and I believe it, absolutely believe it, that when he became president, because he wasn't a general anymore, he didn't know when Area 51 was built. Area 51 is a real thing. Everybody knows this. They can keep buying property up around it. We just keep buying better telephoto lenses. We know there's a freaking base out there. He didn't know it was being built. He calls him up and he goes, hey, I'd like to come out and take a look. And they said, yeah, you don't have clearance. And he goes, excuse me? And he goes, sorry, you're not a general anymore. You don't have clearance. You don't have the right to come out here. He goes, tell you what I'm going to do. I've still got a lot of friends currently in the military. I'm going to call up my buddies down at the 1st Army. We're going to fly out and we're going to come in. You going to stop me? And then they said, all right, you don't have to bring the 1st Army out. You can just come out. It took that sort of level. That was the last president that could even pull those sort of strings. Kennedy was trying to pull strings. He was writing checks his body couldn't cash. The Oliver Stone movie about him trying to break up the CIA and do all these things, he was a crusader, and so was his brother. It was not going to... I'm not saying they were bad people, and hey, look, I respect the fight they were fighting, but they had no allies. Find me politicians that were on Kennedy's side when he died. It was the Caesar thing all over him. Nobody backed him. He was alone with his brother. And when John died, you got to remember, it was supposed to be a dynasty. You know, the Kennedy family there was an older brother, Joseph, who was older than John. He was supposed to be the first president, and he died. His father, brilliant man, said, "Look, you're gonna have to be a war hero." So he flies planes over in Britain, gets shot down, dies. It's like, all right, John, you're up. Robert was supposed to take the hint, and he did not. Yeah, it's like, look, they all but told him, it's like, look, as long as you don't run for president, you live. There he goes and is going to run, and everyone, he was going to win. And wasn't even going to be a question. The ghost of John was there. So do I think it was going to be a problem? Yeah. But and again, it's a power struggle. Do I think the Kennedy's idealism was a good thing? Yeah, sure. But you've got to have the numbers. Otherwise, you're going to be a martyr. And he was, plain and simple. 9/11. You want in the Middle East, you need a reason. Simple as that. You need people fight. The easiest way to get people, and you know this if you're in the media, the easiest way to motivate people is revenge. That's the easiest way. Worked in Pearl Harbor, kind of worked in Vietnam. But with World Trade Center, oh my God, people enlisted, people just to go over there and kick ass. That's all people want to do is go over to the Middle East and just start shooting up people in the Middle East. Well, how are you going to do that? Do I think the target was it was bold to be sure. I think they could have done it with a Pentagon hit on its own, but they wanted to make sure they had the Pentagon was for the military side of it. The World Trade Center was for just the civilized public, and then the supposed plane that went down in Pennsylvania, who knows what it was ridiculous. But it worked. It was a motivating factor, and it entrenched the United States in the Middle East permanently. And all the bases were built there, and a lot of money was made. And do I agree with it? No, I think it could have been done. I think you could have gotten over to the Middle East in different ways. But it was when you look at it, and 9/11 again I criticized it for years and said it was just a sloppy piece of crap. Building 7, oh my God, don't even get me started on Building 7. But once you start looking into it more and more, you're going, okay, mistakes were made, but it did accomplish its ultimate goal. There was a line from, I don't want to drag this one on too more. There's a line from a movie with Robert Redford called 3 Days of the Condor, where at the very end, again, such great parts at the end of the movie, where he worked for the CIA and the CIA thing was knocked out. And the whole thing was about CIA internal problems within the CIA. And our government was killing off our own guys because they knew too much about what was going to happen in the Middle East. And this was in the mid-'70s when this movie came out. And the guy's quote at the end was very interesting. He's going, Robert Redford was asking him, why? Why are you doing this? He's going, because there's some things you can't let the public debate. It takes too long. If they want, when the oil becomes really expensive, the public isn't going to care. They're not going to want to debate over what you're going to do here and what they're going to want it. They're going to want their heating oil. They're going to want their gas. They're going to want it now. What do we do then? Basically, what they were saying was, we're going to be proactive. We're going to see the stuff coming down the road, and we're going to take it. So if that means the United States takes control of the world's gasoline supplies, or at least influences it, that's what they're going to do. I get it. Do I necessarily agree with their methods? No, but I get it. I'm not going to condemn them. Look, the greater good is what the greater good is. Any science fiction person, needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. It's the question that can't be. Last part of this. There was a movie called Swordfish with John Travolta. Brilliant line in it where, and again, any CIA person will tell you this, which is everyone, would you sacrifice a single child to cure cancer? Maybe. The group might. Right? What about if it was your child? Can't. It's an impossible decision. You can't make that decision. Even if you could, it's like that's the point that John Travolta was saying in the movie. It's like, look, we do these things so that you don't have to wrestle with your conscience over it, and hopefully you won't condemn us, down the road. And I know that sounds horrible in some ways, but that's some of the conspiracies I look into. But all the other ones, I believe in most of them. Pearl Harbor, was it a setup? Yeah. If Pearl Harbor is not attacked, Germany, we're speaking German right now. That's it. They had that sucker won. It was wrapped up. They were just tying a bow on. In fact, the German, they're not shy about telling people this. Germany had no intention of attacking the United States. There were plenty of German settlers over here already. It's like, look, we're just going to come in, and there's been books written on it, where we're going to fly dual flags, and the United States is just going to be annexed without firing a shot, because we'll get public support. Nobody's going to know about what's going on over there in Europe. So if you don't, and once, men in power, it's like, oh, what are men in power willing to do to hold on to that? If that means sacrificing Pearl Harbor to do that, of course. We did the same thing with the battleship Maine with World War I. We weren't at war with Spain, for God's sake. Spain had lost its power years ago. All of a sudden, battleship blows up. There was a harbor in the Spanish-American War. We were sending in ships, and I remember it was a great story. It's true, though, where the Spanish commander comes out in a small boat. He's like, hey, what's going on? And they're going, what are you talking about? We're at war. It's like, what? And then he had to go back, and then they had to fight. The commander had no idea. The Alamo, the down in Texas. You remember the Alamo? The Alamo, the Mexicans had nothing to do. Texas wanted to be its own country. So you sacrifice the Alamo. Everyone gets riled up. Then Texas becomes its own state. They cut a deal there. Then they get help from the federal government. And what do you get for the Alamo? Oh, I don't know. You get Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, nice naming, and a worthless piece of real estate called California. For what, 200 guys? Yeah. Go to any businessman. Tell them what lives are worth. Can't put a price on human life? Of course you can't. So that's and I know I sound a bit jaded and callous when I say that. I'm not being glib, though, in any way. I'm saying that when the bigger decisions are made, you can put a price on human life. And that's what they do.
So one thing that's sort of the common thread, I think, through each of these stories that you told me is that each of them sort of does relate back to the government in some way. So I want to ask this not being critical, but just, I need to understand, are you generally critical of the government and its decisions and actions?
No, not as a... Not as a whole. The government does what it can. The problem has always been that individuals, it's that line, again, I love movie references. It's that line from Men in Black. It's like people are smart, but a person is smart, but people are dumb, panicky, and dangerous. It's the opposite with the government. The government can actually get a lot of things done, but the individual corruption tends to taint it so badly that it's hard to get anything done efficiently. So, no, I understand, the government's role and law enforcement's role, and I understand that, why wars are fought. I do. But I'm not being critical of, just pick the U.S. government. I'm not being critical of what they've done for the greater good, but I am critical of some of the methods. And I get it. You have to spin a story a certain way. History is written by the winners, and Napoleon's line was actually better, and that is history is just lies that are agreed upon. Yeah, it's like, okay, the winners sit around a table. It's like, okay, how exactly are we going to tell people what we did here? And because people don't, I don't know if it was Roosevelt that said it, but it's a good quote, which is, don't tell the public only as much truth as they can handle. And I agree with a lot of it. I just don't like watching individuals. If the government did what they could and they did it efficiently enough, and people didn't use the government, or the politicians didn't use the government for their own selfish gains, then I'd be more satisfied with it. But I'm not, I've never picketed in the streets and never written a blog about how horrible the government is. I'm the first one to tell you, look, the greater good is what the greater good is. People will make decisions that, I understand the big decisions that are made. I do. It's the small decisions that tick me off to no end. I'm still trying to figure out Sandy Hook, what exactly feared drum they were beating there. If you look into that, that was ridiculous. I mean, I'm a big believer in statistics. The line, there's two lines here. One was the one from Mark Twain, who said, there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. But he was referring to politicians and how they use statistics. Like, 51% voted for me. Well, yeah, but 49 didn't. Just extrapolate that. But statistics show, the numbers don't lie. And when you look at the numbers I'm not talking about numerology or anything. I'm talking just straight up statistics. When you look at the numbers for a lot of things, the probabilities when they're way off the charts, it's like this, so far out there that it's almost an impossibility, then you got to look at it more closely. And I've run into that so many times with different little things. So the big, let me throw this one at you too. The big moves that are made, Pearl Harbor, most of your major American wars, JFK, I kind of get it. The bigger moves, I understand, 9/11. It's the regional operations that bug me. Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, stupid shootings, that nightclub supposedly in, Florida, where supposedly 100 guys died. They only fired 150 shots, whatever. The small ones, it's almost like some of the I don't want to use the word hoax too much because it's got a bad connotation to it, but it's almost like some of the smaller politician or smaller power groups are running their own things for again, probably personal gain. It's like, that's wrong. The Sandy Hook thing really, really upset me because I saw a lot of women mostly, because it was mostly a children, based event. So many women get upset over this. I mean, there was a lot of tears over the Sandy Hook thing. And for what gain? For what, I believe in karma. I really, really do. I think it's a physical thing you could probably see with the right goggles. And I think whoever did that is just asking for huge amounts of pain.
Well, it's interesting when you look at it, when you mention it, that it's more of a regional thing, because your argument is that if science did prove that science did admit rather that the Earth is flat, it would have this catastrophic ripple effect. But yes, smaller things don't necessarily have that same ripple effect. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. And what's the gain from it? What are you trying to do? I understand the reasoning behind hiding the world being flat. I get that. But what hiding or I should say, saying that you shot up 20, 30 kids, what are you getting from that? Who's benefiting from this? I mean, gun rights people? Pfft, no. It's something. What bills were passed during that time? What local politicians benefited? Were you just trying to create an atmosphere of fear? Did you have to do that? I just don't agree with some of this. I don't think it had nearly the impact that they thought it would. Trying to start was it Ferguson? The trying to start a race war in Ferguson didn't catch. You can throw as much gas on that wood as you want, but it's not happening. Nobody's starting a race war anywhere. I don't know why they keep trying. In fact, hopefully they'll give up one of these days. Don't know if they're trying to. Again, I know fear sells in certain ways, and you need the government more if you're afraid of certain things, but. I just don't agree with the smaller operations. I just think they're badly planned and executed, and I just don't see. And I consider myself a really good creative problem solver. I just don't see the benefit. So I think it's regional, and I think it's selfish.
So let's go back to the flat Earth theory again for a second. Yeah. So what would you need to see or experience or hear, whatever? What would you need? What would you need to have proof that the Earth is spherical as opposed to round?
And by the way, thank you for actually. No. It's good that you said that, because you're the first person that's actually said the right word, because you're supposed to say either spherical or ball or globe,
right?
And everyone keeps saying round. It's like, no, a dinner plate's round. There's lots of round things. You're talking about sphere, that people keep getting stuck with the whole round versus flat. I thank you for doing that. The proof that you would have to show me at this point, it's going to be tough because I don't know. Proof that it would be. The problem is that so many images out there are just a piece of crap that even if you did come up with something that was really, really good, it would take forever to dissect it. How would you prove it? All right. Well, if you had to take it, in fact, you may get your wish here pretty soon, because if you believe that SpaceX story that's coming out next year, you'd have a good one would be, all right, let's just call it what it is. An image, a full HD 4K image of the Earth rotating its axis while you're pulling away from it on the way to the moon, which is what SpaceX absolutely should have if they're boldly going to say that they're going to go to the moon in 2018, next year, it is, by the way, one of the most ridiculous claims I've ever heard of in my life. You want to say you want to colonize Mars? Fine. Everyone's going, yeah, you're going to colonize Mars whenever. Nobody actually believes it's going to happen. But you go out and say, oh yeah, we're going to take tourists around the moon in a year. Wow. Is that a leap of faith? I mean, with what, the Falcon booster? You haven't even tested the Falcon booster. With what capsule? You don't have no capsule. Again, I'm going off on a little rant here. You're going to take 2 people, which means what? You're going to have a crew, an additional 3 to take these tourists on top of it. So you're going to have a capsule that holds 5, never been designed in the history of anything. You're going to attempt something that even NASA hasn't attempted in 50 years. And you're going to take tourists while you do it. Everything you're saying here raises so many flags, and it's like, oh yeah, but we're just going to slingshot around the moon. We're not going to actually land on it. I go, I don't care. You're going to have to produce things that have never been produced in the history of space programs. The stuff that you probably already know about, which is probably what I should kind of circle back to, which is when everybody starts going down the road of, because everyone thinks that NASA is going to get them out of the flat Earth when they start trying to debunk flat Earth, and you keep looking for these mountains and mountains of evidence that should be on the NASA side. And you find that it's the British guy said it best, even though it's a British saying, it's thin. It's really thin, meaning there was only one picture of the Earth taken from space from 1972 till the summer of 2015. Literally 43 years. No other space agency, no satellite. Hubble didn't spin around. Nobody took another shot of the Earth from space for 43 years. No video of the Earth from space. Rotating on its axis until 2015. Again, when we started asking these questions. No video of any object leaving or entering Earth's orbit with the camera running. No video of any astronaut outside any spacecraft, and you're a media guy, doing a 180-degree or better pan. All you have to do is turn around with the camera running. Never happened. Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Soyuz, take a pick. Even now with ISS. No video of anybody going from the ground to ISS with the camera running, or going to the ISS and docking, uncut, unedited. It's like they just black out. They go to computer-generated images. 3 hours later, it's like, oh, here we are in our polo shirts and our khakis and our socks. What's with the no shoes, right? All these things should be there in huge amounts, right? And you just keep scrambling and scrambling. There's nothing there. And you want to use NASA as your crutch, and you can't. And it was amazing. How did I get off on this? The original question was, what proof would you need? Oh, yeah. So the SpaceX thing would have to basically, in this one mission, has the chance to qualify all of these things simultaneously. It's like, you got to understand how power structures work, which is they've gone to extreme lengths not to show you things, right? He doth protest too much. If you go out of your way to not show all these things, and all of a sudden SpaceX is going to say, oh yeah, we're going to do everything, we're going to do this, and basically have the chance to show you all of this simultaneously. It's like, really? I'd like to see you try. Because you're asking, the very least, you're going to have a camera, pointing backwards. I mean, this thing should be bristling with 4K cameras. And cameras from the Earth, from pointing towards the moon. Mainstream media will be covering this thing. The reason why it's not going to happen, is never going to happen, for the same reason that the JAXA program, the JAXA moon probes were never talked about. Most people in the industrialized world don't even know they happened. But you can find them online on YouTube. The Japanese released them finally later. That was like, oh yeah, we're going to send HD cameras around the moon and back, right? But the footage was so corny, not bad resolution or anything. It was just so awful that the mainstream media stopped covering it. It's like they just stopped talking about it. So how is SpaceX going to pull this off? I have no idea. No freaking idea. Plus, there was an article thing I just watched where I think 7 of the Apollo guys are still alive. And they were asking us, like, why haven't we been to the moon since 1972, which is a whole nother thing. And he goes, well, we can't. We had unlimited resources back then, and we had a lot more dedication to the project, and there was money, the money, you couldn't do it now. SpaceX has completely shot that testimony to hell. SpaceX says, oh yeah, we're just going to do it. And we're going to charge for it like an amusement park ride. It's like, what? How are you going to do it? Anyway, sorry.
So, no, that's okay. So given the opportunity, so assuming that the trip is free, you're given all the training.
Absolutely, I would.
You would?
I wouldn't even hesitate because, well, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate because I'd probably die. Oh. They wouldn't let me, they'd have to make me sign a disclosure agreement saying that I'd have to read the script and I couldn't say anything under penalty of death or my family or whatever, even though I never married, had kids. And they'd never let me on that thing. Never. Yeah, and nor could you punk me like the, that British television show. You want to see an interesting show, look up a British television show called Space Cadets, where they punked people through an astronaut space program and actually put them in a simulator and convinced them they were in orbit and actually, did the whole thing and came back down. And from beginning to end, and because they had 2 of the people that were in the punked program were actors, they knew exactly what to do and how to be. So you couldn't punk me for something like that because I'd ask for things that you wouldn't be able to provide. And I don't care if you said that the image outside, I'd know what to look for. I'm not going to give it away here, but there's no way you could put me in a simulator to pull it off. Plus, you'd have to put me on top of a rocket, and I know the little tricks you'd have to do. You'd have to make sure that you put me in an elevator system to where I'd never see the outside world, unless I actually went up in one of those elevators, the outdoor elevators that took me up to the capsule, like they did with Apollo. Although in that case, even the Apollo, we should talk about Apollo real quick, okay. Which is one of the first things that everyone tears down is the Apollo program. And I'm not the first one to say this. The footage from there, I don't care what resolution it's in, has aged so horribly since the 60s. And I get it. You did what you could in the 1960s and nobody thought there was going to be an internet and that people would be analyzing these images and sharing stuff with people and it'd happen so quickly. But that's one of the first things we tell people to let go of because they say, well, yeah, I don't believe in Apollo, but what are you saying about all the other space stuff? And I said, no, you don't get it. I go, the entire reason NASA was even created in the first place was to keep this place under wraps, meaning you have to militarize space. And they said, oh, it's not military. I said, of course it is. I go, fine, they wear white, they smile for the camera, they don't carry guns, but they're still DOD and they're built on, exclusively military technology. NASA wouldn't even have started without all the ex-Nazi scientists. Wernher von Braun, for God's sakes, the man on his headstone, year he was born, year he died, and then just put in Psalms 19:1. I don't know chapter and verse that well. I had to look it up. Psalms 19:1, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Why in the world would the father of rocket scientists, rocket science, why would he put that on his freaking headstone? He knew full well what was going on. He was the first guy to say that. When they said, how are you going to get to the moon? It's like, well, we're going to need 3 rockets, all 3 the size of an Empire State Building. And I don't think it's going to be possible for a long time. 3 years later, oh yeah, we can totally do it within the decade. Totally do it. Van Allen, another guy that completely screwed it up. Van Allen, the radiation belts, 1959, horrible, deadly, blah, blah, blah. And then they couldn't, because they didn't know enough about radiation back then in 1959. It's like, okay, and this is a question I still pose to people, and you can look this up, which is, all right, how are you getting through it then? You know, because it wasn't just Apollo 11. It was Apollo 8, 9, 10, 11, you know, all the way through 17. How'd you get through round trip through the Van Allen radiation belts? What shielding did you use? You get crickets from NASA if you ask them, because there's only two. Yeah, I know that water can shield you, but that's if it's really, really thick. Lead and gold, both really, really heavy. In fact, gold is twice as dense as lead. And that's the last thing you're going to put. You're not going to put an anchor on the top of your rocket. That's the last thing you do. So how did you get through the Van Allen radiation belt? No one will ever answer that. Van Allen himself said, well, we don't have to worry about it because we're going to go really fast. One of the Apollo astronauts said, oh, well, we hadn't discovered it yet, so we didn't have to worry about it. It's like, what? I didn't know there was nerve gas in the room. I walked right through it. What? Why would you say that on camera? Why? Oh my God, the mistakes they made with Apollo. And again, in the 60s, people just bought the pictures. They totally bought it. And I should use, because I don't bring up different people that often, but I got to bring up one of the conspiracy guys who's no longer a conspiracy guy. This will give you an idea. There was a guy out there named Joe Rogan. You may or may not have known of, an American actor /
the Fear Factor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He started out in acting, and he ended up being. It was interesting because he in acting he played a guy that was into conspiracies, and he ended up being into conspiracies later. And he really, one of his favorite subjects was taking on Apollo. He's a passionate guy, Italian, I think. Light people up, sciences, just freaking rip them down. And he was like, you say, look, intersecting shadows and no blast crater and the moon buggies and multiple light sources and all these other weird things that are happening on the moon. And then all of a sudden, he's winning. He's winning these debates against science. And all of a sudden, he goes dark for a while. He comes back and he's given a brand new show on Sci-Fi Channel called Joe Rogan Questions Everything. And the very first episode, he recants every bad thing he ever said about NASA. And then starts getting astronauts on his radio program, and Neil deGrasse Tyson he's friends with now. And people ask him, why. It's like, what the hell happened, dude? He won't talk about it. He will not answer Alex Jones says, well, no, he was threatened, but he won't say why he was threatened and all this crap. He was too good. All things being equal, if both sides in a debate are equal, the person with more conviction is going to at least come off as the winner because they seem like they're more passionate about it. And he was winning. He's the only conspiracy guy that I've ever known that has gone against. He won't even talk about conspiracies now. Like he talked about, once you're conspiracy, you're always conspiracy. You don't just stop believing in it.
Right.
But he won't say it. Anyway, the point is he was really good at tearing apart Apollo, and he was there's a lot of people like him out there that there's too many things now with Apollo. It's just a joke. It's just horrible. So people, that's the first thing we go after, and then people, of course, say, well, is there space? You're not saying that you're saying that space isn't real at all. I'm going, no, I'm saying that space isn't what you think it is. I go, we don't know what's up there. I go, you're looking at lights mostly. I don't care how powerful your telescope here is. Down here, it's really blurry. The only good images are from NASA. Everything keeps coming back to the same agency, which is, well, either NASA or or JAXA or the European group, but they're all blueprinted off of NASA.
I want to turn away a bit because I just want to know a bit more about you. So what did or do you do professionally?
Now I do this. Okay. This is all I do now. I did not want to do this, but at the same time, I'm a big believer in fate. For whatever reason, I started out again. I had a great career doing different things. I played video games professionally, then segued into proprietary software training for years. So I was in Boulder, Colorado, doing one of those two things for 20 years, and was great. And I'd never been to Colorado before, and Boulder's a beautiful place, and even though there's no water there, but it's sunny 300 days a year, so that was really, really cool. And, got to do conventions, so when I was gaming, I was doing Macworld, San Fran, and Boston, and E3. I was playing games, making games look better than they were.
What games?
Oh God, our stuff mostly. And I didn't like our games as much. I initially got in because I won a world computer pinball tournament back in '94. It was a Japanese developer, and their publisher was out of Boulder, Colorado. And I won, and I'll tell you, and you print it or not print it, it doesn't matter. I won because I came up with a clever way of playing. I won't call it time travel, but it kind of was finishing the tournament before it could be finished, because the tournament lasted an entire year and you're playing with people against people all over the world. So what you would do is you would play the game, you would get a score, generate an algorithm, send in your score with the algorithm so they could verify the score to the encryption code. And they say, oh, it's a legit score. Plain and simple. It's going, I wonder how they're generating that. Well, part of the algorithm was based on the old date time stamp on your machine. So I said, okay, who's to say that they're assuming that no matter what, the date timestamp is absolutely legit, no matter what. So what I did was before I'd play a game, or before I generate the code, I'd bump up the date timestamp to the next month, to the next month, and to the next month. So I would play these games because I was wasting games. If you get 900 million and then you get a billion, you got to throw the 900 million away. That takes time. I wasn't going to spend an entire year playing this tournament. So I played basically the whole back half of the tournament in 3 weeks. And just waited, and I just wait every month. It's like, oh yeah, here's my score for August. Here's my score for September. Even though I had played it, I mean, some of them were gathering dust. And because I didn't want to turn it into a horse race. There was this guy from China who was really good, and I did not want to keep going against this guy. So anyway, I won it, and they called me up and they said, hey, how would you like to test out our new game? Fine. And I hated it. It was a new pinball game, and the company, in fact, it's still out there. The developer, he's called Little Wing. I think that's off a Jimi Hendrix song or album out of Japan. Anyway, so they hired me and I got in there, and that's what I did for several years. And then when I went right down the street, because Boulder was a great town to be in for startup software companies, and did proprietary software where I traveled around the country training people in time and attendance software, and which is not fun software to train people in because it is buggy as hell. I mean, like anthill buggy.
I've had to use it.
Oh yeah. It's because the problem is that it grows laterally, meaning time and attendance it changes not from just state to state, but by county to county.
Right.
So with the exception of 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week, anything goes when it comes to hourly people. So you had to build all the software so wide, and oh my God, things broke all the time. So I had to come up with workarounds, and I was really good at workarounds. Because I treated it like a game. I was like, okay, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to get from here to here without going through the main steps. And I traveled all around the United States training people, and a few outside the United States. And that's what I did for years. And then the real estate crunch thing happened here in the United States, and everything went chaos, and companies started folding all over the place. And my friends who were doing startup companies, I jumped around to a few more startup companies. And then while I was doing that, that's when I ran into this. I had more time on my hands. And again, when you're not married and you don't have kids, you get so much downtime, on weekends and stuff. So that's when I, again, kind of stumbled across this. And now that's what I do. I don't know. I mean, every single day I live and breathe this stuff.
So are you making money off of it?
Yeah, some, not as much as I'd like, but the YouTube, there's money for that. There's money from the book. There's money from the website. Not a ton, but enough. But there are feelers out there. In fact, one of the reasons I went full on into this was this was in the end of 2015. There was a production company out of New York, a fairly big reality television company, and they said, look, we got to turn this thing into a show. And but she jumped the gun. It wasn't nearly as hot. The Neil deGrasse Tyson B.O.B. thing hadn't happened yet, or the Kyrie Irving thing hadn't happened yet. And so not only did she not get that project greenlit, even though we screen tested with a whole bunch of other flat Earth people, she ended up getting fired, I think. So I felt bad for her, but look, at least she was willing to take the chance. But since then, there have been other production people have been feeling, because they know. I mean, the numbers are too big now. If you type in flat Earth and sort by upload date, it's trending bigger than quite a few mainstream things, and people smell the money in it. And not that I don't care. That's fine. If you guys want to do a show, as long as they keep doing it. I already told people, I was like, look, whatever countdown's the pipe, it better not deviate. I'm not going to do some sort of ancient aliens thing. I go, this is all I care about is the flat Earth thing. I preach it, I live it, I breathe it. So that's what we've kind of been pushing for right now. Because once it gets into mainstream, which is why the Kyrie Irving thing, oh my God, what a great thing that was. Once once the first, and I don't care how small a production it is, if there is a mainstream show that talks about this, it will, because this topic is so polarizing, it gives license for every other mainstream media to just descend upon it with whatever they want. They want to say, is this the end of television as we know it? Is it great? Is it the worst idea ever, or is it genius? You can imagine, flat earthers, does it fall flat? Whatever. But it gives them at least a reason to, which is why when you have the best NBA point guard start talking about it. He exposed more people to that thing in a weekend than we did in 6 months. So
last couple questions, and then I have to let you go.
Okay.
But so one, what did you do with your antique globes?
I gave them away, but here's a funny story. This will give you an idea of what I just gave them away to people. I had somebody mail me a John Glenn for President bumper sticker from 1984 when he actually ran for president. He wasn't a serious candidate, I don't think, back then. But it was actually autographed on the back, John Glenn, right? Which is pretty good. If you want an astronaut signature and on an authentic bumper sticker, there it is. Once he got into flat Earth, he mailed it. He goes, maybe you could show it on your show or give it to someone who cares. He goes, it's not worth anything to me now. I go, that's interesting. So anything that has to do with space at all, I avoid most space shows. I still will watch some science fiction, but it's changed my attitude about it now. So I have a hard time watching like Star Trek and Star Wars, and I'll watch it for the storyline. I'll watch it for the plot line and try to do the whole thing. It's like, okay, maybe it's an alternate reality type thing. But any show, anything that I see on television, I've gotten rid of just about anything that was space related around me. And anything that I see on TV, I immediately turn it. If it's something, anytime I see Neil deGrasse Tyson on television, I have to resist throwing stuff at the set. From what I get of this conversation, I already know the answer to this question, but in honor of being a good journalist, I just want to know, like, this is something you genuinely believe that the Earth is flat, correct? Like, this isn't. Oh no, this is not. No, and you have to ask that. It is not only do I believe it, and I didn't want to believe it. That's the catch here, and you got to understand that with anyone in the community, nobody in the community thinks this is a great idea. Waking up one morning, we all think the same thing. It's like the T-shirt. There's T-shirts already out there. I became a flat earther because I tried to debunk flat Earth. So absolutely, I believe in it. Do I consider myself insane? No, I don't. I shouldn't say I'm normal like the rest of people, but I'm more open-minded than most. But absolutely, I believe in it. And I will say this: am I 100% sure exactly what the shape is? No, nobody is. But you ask anyone in the community, they'll say the same thing, which is we are 100% sure that it's not a globe. And one of the biggest reasons is that because somebody, take your pick who, somebody is going to huge lengths to show you as few images as possible about it. And again, it's, he doth protest too much. If you go out of your way to not, to not show something, it's you're hiding something. So what are you hiding? And so that's kind of where we are now.
All right. Well, that's all I have for today. If anything else comes to mind, would you mind if I reach out again?
Oh, no, not at all. Feel free. Do you want the convention? Do you want the convention website real quick? Or do you already have it?
Can you email it to me?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Anything else you need from resources? Do you need? I didn't even ask you. How did you find me?
I Googled flat Earth, and I think you're one of the first ones who came up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Have you been to the YouTube page?
Yeah.
Or
so I've been to enclosedworld.com. That is your.
Oh, that's good enough.
Yeah. So I have only watched the first 3 videos so far.
Okay.
But it's all part of my research to get through.
That's fine.
But interestingly enough, my father, I believe he watches a number of, I don't know if he watches your videos specifically, but he does watch and he does his research on the flat Earth theory. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So. Cool. Yeah. Same thing sort of happened to me up here when the reason I'm in Victoria is because the father of the girl that I'm with right now, he told her, So he goes, look, you got to watch this flat Earth stuff. And then she found out there was a flat Earth mixer in Seattle back in 2015, and she flew down, and I was there. And she's like, hey, why don't you come to Victoria and hang out for a while? It's like, okay.
So you live in Victoria now?
Yeah.
But you're originally from Washington?
Yeah, originally from Washington.
Okay, Washington State.
Yes, Washington State.
Okay. All right, perfect, Mark. This has been really great to chat with you. Thank you.
Cool. I'm glad you got something out of it. And yeah, if something else comes up.